Thank you very much, Dr. Nazreen, for inviting us to be here today. It's quite an honor and a privilege. This is really an amazing event. And really, I'm here as a father today, a father of a very young daughter. I would like to thank everybody here for the amazing work that they're doing, because I'm hoping that by the time it matters for her, maybe we will reach the parity that you all are talking about. Thank you so much. Wonderful. Very, very inspiring. I'm the father of, for those who didn't catch the introduction earlier, this is Kamea. She is, I guess, the second science princess.
The original is here.
The original is there. So she's smaller and doesn't have as much training yet. I am the father who actually, I feel like I watched this event 7 years ago and was trying to live out some of these things. I was actually the guy telling the grandmother not to give her the dolls, but like, look, here are trucks. And I actually remember the day I looked my beautiful daughter, 18 months old, in the eye and gave her a Hot Wheels truck. And she held it up and looked me in the eye and threw it over her shoulder behind her. When Kamea was born, like most parents, I wondered about her future. I had fears like all parents do. And nowadays in particular, you hear so much about how the jobs of the future will require skills in science, engineering, programming, math. But then, of course, as we've all been talking about today, you look around, it's clear that these fields are underrepresented by women. And there are, of course, many historical and structural reasons for this gender asymmetry in STEM fields. But one of the biggest reasons that you don't hear as much about is simple lack of interest among girls themselves entering the pipeline, especially as they enter their teens or around 6th grade, as you mentioned. Why is this? I know that there are people telling them, you can't do this, you can't do that, and I find it hard to believe that all of them have terrible parents and teachers. They aren't all being told what they cannot do. I feel like there is something, in addition to those kind of biases, there's something more subtle going on that we have to address. And people have been talking about the stereotypes and almost subliminal messages. There's something really there that is insidious, hard to get to. Many young girls, they form opinions about what is considered normal, and I want everyone to see air quotes, normal, because it's probably not normal, it's just what we're used to. They learn these things, these norms, simply by observing the world around them. They see more men in these fields, both in the real world, such as maybe their family members, and certainly in the media. And then when they do have role models of excellent women doing amazing things in STEM fields, naturally, the role models are presented as exceptional. But what does that mean? That's the exception, right? They're not seeing that as normal, as being typical. And when we get to the point when little girls see big girls holding 50% of the jobs in science and engineering, we won't need to meet anymore to talk about this stuff because the work will have been done. But until then, we have this kind of a chicken and egg problem where we don't have enough girls in the pipeline to become tomorrow's role models, but we also don't have enough of these role models to attract girls into the pipeline. So what do we do about that? Well, this imbalance, I think, is particularly tragic because children, when they're born into the world, they don't have these biases. They learn them later. When kids are very young, every toddler is a scientist, literally forming hypotheses about their world and testing them over and over, driving their parents a little crazy. So many questions. Why? 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 How many parents here? Have you ever heard the question why? They're so curious. They love building things. They love taking things apart, even when they shouldn't. Where does this curiosity and passion to invent and to imagine and to create, where does it go? To a child, every kitchen is a laboratory. Every garage is a makerspace. Every backyard, a wilderness to be explored. So parents have an important role to play here, especially in the early years. They shape much of what the child perceives as what is, quote, normal. When my daughter was born, I said, no way, these doors will not be shut to her based on these crazy, outdated assumptions about what's normal, hence the truck. I was not obsessed that she would become a scientist or an engineer, but I did want to make sure that she would have the opportunity to if that's where her passions led her. So in an attempt to compensate for the shortage of female role models in these fields, I took some extreme extra measures to expose her to science and engineering and so on from a very early age. We didn't say no dolls. In fact, she had lots of dolls. The grandparents were giving her dolls for Christmas and birthday, and couldn't really stop that. But it didn't mean we couldn't have interventions in my own sort of daddy way. So I didn't buy her a dollhouse. I didn't even make her one. Instead, Kamea and I built a dollhouse together. We made it. It was about this big, out of popsicle sticks and Elmer's glue. It took about a year, but this was when she was 4 or 5 years old. And by the time she was 5, she had sort of a natural understanding of how things like gears and pulleys and elevators and levers, and of course, secret trap doors, how these sort of things work. So this has been going on from a very early age. And then when we had the dollhouse, we did what I call directed playtime, where I invented a series of stories where her dolls, mostly female, were scientists, technologists, engineers, designers, mathematicians, even CEOs of companies where we pretended to build and sell electric cars to the stuffed animals. Entrepreneurship is a very important thing I don't think really can be separated from STEM. It shouldn't be. In time, my real-life friend, Pamela Mativier, say hi, Pam.
Hello.
She and a business partner, we adapted these stories into a series of children's books, which this is the first of them, and this is what Kamea has been. There you go. There's one up there. I think you won the drawing or something. To try and reach, I mean, how to scale these stories and this sort of the philosophy. So we published these books, not just for girls but boys also, because it is really critical, if you think about it, that boys see girls in these roles too, arguably in some cases just as important. So we believe that to make this positive change in the world and to break that sort of chicken and egg cycle that I was talking about, interventions must impact girls at every life stage, of course, but very critically, they must first reach girls when they are still very, very young, pre-kindergarten, before their minds have started closing to the wide open possibilities. Now, this is really hard for parents. I happen to be lucky enough that I work from home and I had time to do these sorts of things. Not all parents possess the time, the energy, or the knowledge to do this, but I believe that we can give them and teachers tools to make it a lot easier. And we therefore encourage the development and distribution of age-appropriate books, toys, and games depicting females in leadership roles in science and technology, especially across those geographic regions and economic strata where they need them the most. Thank you very much.